Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stefan Spencer, and today I'm very excited to have David Doc Searls here with us. He is an American journalist, columnist, and a widely read blogger. He's co-author of the Cluetrain Manifesto, author of The Intention Economy, When Customers Take Charge, editor-in-chief of Linux Journal, formerly, a fellow at the Center for Information Technology and Society at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and an alumnus fellow of the Berkman Center for Internet and Society at Harvard University. Doc, it's so great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here, too. I should add to that long list of universities that never would have let me in as a student that I'm also a visiting scholar, which is half true. I'm visiting at Indiana University for the next year, so while we're working on a lot of what we're talking about. So
amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Let's first start by talking about the Cluetrain Manifesto, because at least for me, that really put you on the map. Yeah. I hadn't heard of you before that, and it was such a monumental, pivotal work back in those early days, 22 years ago, of the development of the internet and internet marketing, and I think it has shaped how things have evolved to some degree. I would like to have said it would have made more of a difference. People are still doing all sorts of crazy marketing things that don't help our consumers, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. So Cluetrain Manifesto, how did that come about, and how did that change how the internet and marketing developed?
So the Cluetrain Manifesto was written by four technical guys, one of whom was really technical. That was Rick Levine. But Chris Locke, David Weinberger, and myself were and remain writers, primarily journalists. And but we were also doing work for companies. At the time, Chris was working for IBM. David, I forget who David was working for, and I was working at Linux Journal. I was an editor for Linux Journal. But we were all enthusiasts about the internet. We had all been aware from the 1980s of what the potential of the internet was, that it was going to obsolesce pretty much every other medium in the world and completely change all of our lives. And most importantly, actually liberate all of us as human beings to play a much more active role in the commercial world, as well as the creative world, in every world that we interacted with. And to a large degree, a lot of that's come true, but the important thing is that we were addressing the Cluetrain Manifesto to companies that didn't really get the internet, that didn't really get what the internet was about. And so, we were just involved in conversations with each other, a lot of it on the phone. And as the four of us kind of struck up this created this little cabal of guys who just kind of got on the phone and carped about the world with each other and told stories about how clueless marketing was. We talked about, how we accepted or did not clients for our marketing services, and I said, well, my marketing philosophy that I share with potential clients is that it's a kind of a marketing logic. The first condition is markets are conversations, and the second is conversation is fire, and the third is that marketing is therefore arson if it's done right. And if you want somebody to set fires, I'm your guy, and if not, go write a press releases for yourself. And Chris said, I think it was Chris, may have been David, well, let's test that out. Let's test that theory. Let's set a fire. And so we decided to put up a website that pretty much said everything that we've been talking about to each other. And it got called the Cluetrain Manifesto for three reasons. One was, there's an old Silicon Valley epitaph, something of a joke, that the Clue train stopped there 4 times a day for 10 years. And they never took delivery. Specifically, that was about Apple at the time. Steve Jobs had just come back, and it was truly a clueless company for a long time, certainly not anymore. And one of us said, is that domain taken, Cluetrain? And I looked, and it wasn't, and I bought it for $75. And that was the entire dialogue that caused the Cluetrain Manifesto to get the name that it has. We called it a manifesto because it worked for Marx, and we had 95 theses because that worked for Luther. Those were market tested, we thought, so we used those. And basically it was a rant. A lot of the 95 theses were packing material, quite frankly. But what the really important one was one that Chris shared with the rest of us. And he shared it as a little graphic. He sent it out by email. And it said, we are not seats or eyeballs or end users or consumers. We are human beings, and our reach exceeds your grasp. Deal with it. And we like that so much that we've made that the one clue you ought to get this year, which of course is 22 years ago. And It's actually one clue that is not true as of today. We are still seats, eyeballs, end users, and consumers, and our reach does not exceed the grasp of the marketers of the world, who, if anything, have made the world a lot worse. And not because they followed Cluetrain, but maybe in some ways because they did, because they thought, well, we can do conversation now. Let's do it by intercepting people personally. We'll follow them around on their, as they go from website to website. We'll use cookies to follow them and other tracking files, and we'll accumulate lots of data about them, and then we'll market at them accordingly. And that is what has made, it's not by the way, that's not exactly what's made Google rich, and to a lesser extent, it isn't what's made Facebook rich either, even though they're the target of a great deal of ire at this point. Google makes most of its money actually still from search advertising, which doesn't even require tracking for the most part. But still, tracking has become so normative that it caused the GDPR, it caused the CCPA in California. It has made the world infinitely worse as an experience online. It's eliminated whatever little privacy we had just given to respect human beings give to each other. Marketing has become by far the biggest violator of privacy in human history. And for what it's worth, I've spent a lot of the last 22 years since then, especially in the last 10 or so, fighting that personally. I've written an enormous amount about that. If you go to my website at doc.searls.com, that's a short link toward what's a too long URL for my blog that's still at Harvard. You'll see something called People versus Ad Tech, and there are 142 pieces since 2008 that I've written about this. And I've pretty much stopped. I've stopped because I actually want to make Cluetrain come true, and I want to make come true what I wrote about in a subsequent book called The Intention Economy, When Customers Take Charge. What happens when customers do take charge, which is what that first clue in Cluetrain actually said. When we are in charge of our own lives online, and not just so we can give ourselves actual privacy like we have in the physical world. You'll notice that both of us are wearing clothes. That's privacy technology. We have that here in the physical world, right? We don't have it online yet. We don't have clothing and shelter. And we shouldn't have to rely on government regulation to give it to us. We should just have it because it's built into the tools that we use. It's built into how we interact with each other. So if we go to a website or we engage a service online, we don't have to think about whether or not we have privacy. It's just there because we've taken the trouble to put on a shirt and some pants or the digital equivalents of those, and which are also, by the way, still uninvented. So we've got an uphill climb on that one. But the main idea with the intention economy is that rather than having marketers constantly guessing, mostly based on surveillance, at what we might want, and making a really gigantic category error, which is that we are in the market for something at all times, when in fact we're not. You and I are talking to each other right now. We're not busy wanting anything other than to have a conversation. We're not busy putting ourselves in the market for anything. You know, we own things 100% of the time, but we're looking for things a very small percentage of the time. But the assumption behind most direct marketing, which is what advertising has become, it used to be advertising, now it's direct marketing, is that we're in the market. We want to buy something at all times. It's not the case. But when we do, we should have better ways of expressing our intentions than what companies are guessing at because they think they know us or their robots think they know us. So if I want a stroller for twins downtown in the next 2 hours, I should be able to express that in a way that the market can hear and respond to in a way that respects my privacy and works. And we actually have some tech for this. It's Customer Commons, a nonprofit that we created out of the Project VRM at the Berkman Center, the Berkman Klein Center now at Harvard, and which is still happening. We have a list of about 600 people on that. But we created this nonprofit, Customer Commons. We have some tech now. That's what we're going to try out in Bloomington, Indiana in the next few months and see how it goes. It's very, very alpha to beta right now, but it's going to happen. And it will involve, lots of different categories. I want a car. I want a babysitter, I want this, I want that, and be able to do this anonymously and then form real relationships after that with vendors that are welcoming of that and can understand real loyalty rather than the kind that we have right now.
So how does this relate to the concept of the cathedral and the bazaar?
The Cathedral and the Bazaar is this wonderful book written by Eric Raymond about the same time that Cluetrain came out. And I would say, by the way, with a great deal more influence. We're talking about open source today because Eric personally made it his business to promulgate that meme. The term open source was not used except by the military before 1998. And a bunch of geeks, including him, got together in early 98 and decided, we're not talking about free software anymore. We're talking about open source. And not even here's why. That's what we're going to do. And I was enlisted in that cause and promulgated it as an editor for Linux Journal. And the important part about it is that his metaphor, the Cathedral and the Bazaar, was really applying to software development, that rather than having big companies, the cathedrals, in their closed source proprietary way, writing all software for their purposes and secondarily for those of their employees and customers and consumers. There's a difference. That software would be developed out in the bazaar, out in the open marketplace, by individuals working together. And that's what we have now. I mean, open source is now an essential part of the way that software development works. And companies will hire open source developers knowing they're going to work on that code for the world and not just for the company itself, and that code is correctable by anybody who's qualified and participates and knows what they're doing. And there's a kind of a meritocracy involved. Its relevance to the marketplace and to Cluetrain is that out here in the marketplace we should have full agency. We should be able to participate in the way markets work and not just be targets to be acquired, controlled, managed, locked in, which is the language that marketing still uses to talk about us, and that we should have our own means to interact at scale. For example, not just when we say we're ready to buy something, but we're ready to be loyal. Like for example, I'm very, very loyal to Trader Joe's and to Pete's Coffee. Those are two things. But I told my wife when she said, I'd like to move to Santa Barbara from the Bay Area. I said, my only condition for that is that there is a Pete's Coffee there. And secondarily, we'll have better connectivity than we got in the Bay Area, which is true. There was actually better connectivity available. And a Pete's had just opened at that time. And Pete's has a loyalty program that frankly is a pain in the ass. Well, you have to get your phone out. I'm going to pick up my phone, but I don't see it here. And you have to hold it up to the QR code reader and then you get promotional materials and a bunch of other stuff. And it slows things down at the cash register. It's a pain in the ass for everybody on both sides. And what does it give them? I mean, they're a great store. They have loyalty already. And when there's a Starbucks and a Pete's, the Pete's wins generally when it's next door. So if people like coffee and not just large quantities of milk with coffee flavoring, they're going to come to Pete's. So, but they have this pain in the ass loyalty program. What if not only would I be able to express loyalty in my own way, but a standard way that I can do it with every company I deal with? Loyalty looks like this. The customer reaches out and says these things and provides these means where the company's product could be constantly improved because they're getting real caring feedback and ideas from customers. An idea I would have for Pete's is one I got from one of their managers. Well, the best tasting thing on here is their cortado. The cortado is an equal mix of espresso and milk, but preferably half and half. Try it sometime. It's on their cash register. You can't see it, but it is, but it's not up on the wall. They used to have one called traditional cappuccino, which by the way is the same thing but more expensive. That's still on their cash register. So those things are, I would like to suggest to Pete's, this thing you suggested by one of your managers would actually be good in all of your stores. Or if you're going to give an app, have the menu on the app. Don't just have it on the wall. Or if you use the app with the QR code, do it in a way you just come in, you scan the QR code, and it's automatically in there. They have your name. They have what you'd like. But instead, it's this really kludgy system that's a one-off that they bought from some company that's an arms dealer to retailers and isn't a shared experience in common with, you could have the same kind of thing with Starbucks. You can have the same kind of thing with the grocery store when you come in. What aisle are the canned beans on? What aisle is the yeast? I don't know. Scan this, it's in the store. There's some standard-based way that stores appear on an app that you carry into the store and you scan with the QR code and now you know where stuff is. Instead of being the kind of promotional thing that we have now. If you start rethinking markets from the customer side, and you start thinking of the customer having scale across all the retailers that they deal with or all the services that they deal with, what does the world start to look like? The internet provides this. The internet is essentially a peer-to-peer system. It's not just it's not just the latest version of the same old industrial system where large companies dominate entire markets and get their own scale.
So how did companies and just the industrial complex go wrong when everyone is so excited about these two books, the Cluetrain Manifesto, the Cathedral and the Bazaar, and now here we are 20 some years later and it's a mess, and it doesn't feel like consumers have real data rights. It's kind of like data rights is the new version of civil rights. We don't have it, and it's the companies in charge. As you said, it's not in our best interest as the end user.
It's interesting. I mean, that's a really good way of putting it. Data rights is the new civil rights. The civil rights don't go away. I mean, I was involved in the civil rights movement in the 1960s in Greensboro, North Carolina, 10,000 years ago, and it's a bigger issue now than it ever was, right? But data rights is gigantic, and I think the answer is one provided by Marshall McLuhan, who really invented media studies back in the 60s, 50s, and 60s. And he says every new medium and every new technology, he didn't make a distinction between the two really, changes us completely. It changes us. That one of his one-liners and one attributed to him is that we shape our tools and then our tools shape us. And he saw computers coming, and he saw it implicit in satellite communication back around 1960 when he coined the term global village. We're in that global village now. Digital technology has not only shaped us, but it's with the internet, it has put us in a world like where you and I are right now, without distance. And for that matter, and I owe this metaphor to my wife, who's observant about this stuff, without gravity. The physical world is full of prepositions, and prepositions give us location: over, under, around, through, beside. There are about 60 of those, and that's how we understand the world. We can't get along without prepositions that locate us. The only one that applies on the internet is with. You and I are with each other right now. When this is over, we're not with each other, and it's kind of binary that way. And we're in different parts of the world, even if we're a few blocks apart, our gravity's looking straight down, but if you're in Australia and I'm here, you're upside down, but we don't see that, right? That we're in this world without distance. It's kind of like being weightless. And it's taking us a long time to adapt. And there's a principle in technology that says what can be done will be done until we figure out what's wrong with it and stop doing it. We did that with nuclear power. We've done that with stone tools. We've done it with guns. We've done it with machinery, all kinds of things, right? And by the way, bad things will be done with good things at all times. And McLuhan also wrote that every new medium works us over completely, and that's basically what happened. The great optimism that the Cluetrain authors had, and we were called correctly cyber utopians, I think will come true in the long run. But in the meantime, the stuff that works us over completely still manifests, and it's too easy. We designed web servers originally so everybody could have a web server. If I'm not mistaken, every Windows and Mac operating system in the 90s shipped with a web server. You could run a web server on your computer. Maybe they still do. I don't know. I mean, Linux, which is in every clock for that matter, it is a server-based operating system. Anybody can have one in their computer, but all of us should be able to be servers as well as clients. But even the notion of client-server, I've been told, and is perhaps apocryphal, that it's a euphemism for slave-master. And it's been called calf-cow. We're always the calves going to the cows of websites for the milk of HTML and cookies. And that kind of master-slave relationship is one that the industrial system, which began in the mid-1800s when industry won the Industrial Revolution and has never left us, gave us, because the imperatives of the industrial system are well understood, and they are very efficient. They work really well. A big company could do a lot of things that a small company can't do. We're seeing this with cloud. It's a lot easier to put stuff in a cloud than it is just to keep accumulating disk drives. I have over there, and I just put a website, I put up a blog post about this yesterday. There are 17 drives over there in the corner of my desk, and half of them are dead, right? And what do I do to back up? I'm having to put it in the cloud. It's sooner or later. It's a more efficient way of doing that. I used to have a web server under my desk in the 90s, and I used to have my own mail server under my desk because I could buy static IP addresses. Try buying a static IP address now. It's assumed, no, you don't need one. Nobody demands one. Well, there's no way to do it. And of course, internet connectivity was provisioned asymmetrically because it was assumed you're going to want television and you're going to want to do nothing but download. So they only publish download speeds rather than upload. Interestingly, Spectrum, my provider here in New York, which was never better than 10 megabits up, even though it was a half gig down, is now 80 up. I don't know why. It just suddenly is. Maybe because it knows we're doing Zoom now. So why not, right? They were tired of the complaining, so they just cranked up the upstream speed. So, I mean, we're still, my belief is we're still in very early times right now, that we're going to be digital for the next, not only few decades, probably for the duration. For as long as we're human, we're not going to stop being digital. The internet is not going to go away, no matter how much companies or countries sphincter what it can do. But it's going to be with us for the duration. We're going to be with each other, whether we like it or not, all over the world, and we're going to create and solve problems that way. And we've just started on that. It's a long journey, and while I've been young a long time, I'm demographically old at this point. I'm not going to live to see it, but it is going to happen. I remain a cyber utopian about that. I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I'm optimistic too. And I'm curious what your thoughts are about AI and how, let's say, personal agents or smart agents, the AI that knows more about you than perhaps your spouse, surfing on your behalf, searching on your behalf, curating all day long in the background, bringing stuff to your attention. Is that something that is ultimately for our highest good, or is that just going to be infiltrated by marketers and advertisers just like the internet is?
Well, all the above. I mean, the intelligent agent I have right now is my wife. As you're describing that, it's like a perfect explanation. Like I'm pretty much calendar blind. I'm not clock blind, but I'm calendar blind. I will make mistakes. If you ask, when is September 19th, she'll tell you it's a Wednesday or whatever it is. She knows. She's very, very observant and picks up lots of details I don't, and runs both our calendars. But I think, first of all, most AI is ML. It's machine learning, right? It's not really. I think real intelligence of the human sort is very tacit. It's not explicit. Computers are explicit. The philosopher Michael Polanyi made this distinction about 50 years ago and more than that, and it's a really important one, which is what we know is mostly tacit. I mean, so we generally don't know how we'll end the sentences we start or remember how we started the sentences we're ending, but somehow say meaningful things anyway that to some degree come across to people at the other side. And they can't repeat verbatim exactly what we said. That's explicit. The computer can repeat it exactly, right? This is being recorded. It can repeat it exactly, right? But the human being just gets meaning, and the human being just wants meaning and knows what's important and what's not and can't say how or why. And no, far as I know, no machine intelligence has replicated that or can. And that is a fundamental problem with artificial intelligence and pretty much all our fantasizing about it. However, as I look around here, for example, I mean, we can't show you these, but I've got my bookshelves over here. There are hundreds of books there. And I'm going to take about half of them to Indiana next month. Which half would I want to take? All of those, I would love, and by the way, code exists for this. I could just scan the ISBN number on the back of those things. And there is some intelligence that could say, this is machine learning at work. Okay, that's an ISBN number. That is, Too Big to Know by David Weinberger, and that is, the Master Switch by Tim Wu, right? And and I can just look down the list and say, oh, this one, not that one, this one, not that one. All of what we own, we can put, right now, I could take all those 18 drives I have over here, 18 including the computer, and I can put a QR code on all of those. And then I can tell Western Digital or Nexstar or Seagate, which makes some of those, here's my experience with these things. And this one died, that one didn't die, this one died then, this one didn't die then. And all of those can, here's some Grado headphones. These things sound fantastic, they really do. But the earphone part here, the rubber part, rots after a while. I'd like another one. They last about 2 years. Automatically give me one another 2 years and I'll pay $10 for it. Right. This is the kind of experience I can have as an individual human being that'd be really good for the companies to know, as I was saying earlier. But ML can be involved in that. ML can be involved in, like, I have doctors, because I live in all these places, New York, Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and soon to be Bloomington, Indiana. And I have up here a pile of medical records that are in print, some of them copies, Xerox copies of faxes of copies of faxes of copies of faxes, because the medical business likes to communicate by fax, ironically and disturbingly. And we can improve on that, but we can't improve on it from the inside. We have to do it from the outside in. And I would love to do ML and AI, whichever you prefer, on all that stuff. Like when did I have, that hernia operation? When did I have my hip replaced? When did I have and where was that? Who was that doctor? I forget. That kind of stuff is really useful, and financial stuff as well. But having marketers guess at that is just ludicrous, actually. We need capacities on our side that help us, and then we can go to the marketing functions of the world and say, here's the stuff that you need to know, or you might want to know, with conditionalities we've attached to it that are good for you as well as for us, and that may not make you a honeypot for bad actors that want to grab everybody's data in the world. And by the way, if it's done in the right way, also leave you legally held harmless if there's a lawsuit or something. All this stuff can be worked out. So, but I would rather have a dumb agent before I have a smart agent. The dumb agent would be the one that says, as we had a few months ago, okay, we're looking for a hybrid car that gets at least this miles per gallon, that has that doesn't need a lot of repairs, that kind of thing. And that's a dumb agent, right? That would do that. And then if you want to get smart about it later, that'd be great.
Yeah, it'd be really nice to have this kind of new data rights that we really desperately need as consumers, have that also compensate us. We could make the choices like, all right, I'm going to share this data about my hip replacement or whatever with you, but I want some compensation for that. I want a special discount on whatever that thing is that relates to my mobility or whatever. There are, I don't know, 5 or 10 different efforts right now going on toward exactly that. My problem with all of them is they all deal into the system as it now exists, which is, and also it assumes that my data has more value than it actually has. And if you look at what, Google or Facebook thinks my data is worth, it's really not very much. Getting compensated for that, fractions of pennies in most cases, just sets up yet another system within the existing marketing ecosystem that can be gamed and doesn't. I just rather, guys, I need this car. I need another hard drive. Right now I would like a portable hard drive that's at least 8 terabytes. I can't find one. I have a put on the marketplace right now, and my payback on that is I get the damn product I wanted, not that I got 4 pennies for having said so to marketers that are going to spam me until the end of time, and they can't say otherwise because that's what they prove they've been doing for the last 25 years, right? So, I'd rather just build a whole new system that actually works for me, my way, and by me I mean everybody. I don't mean just me, myself. I mean everybody who's a customer should have their own ways to express a need or express a preference or express anything else that works at scale. It seems to me like we're due for a a new edition of the Cluetrain Manifesto that says you guys just still don't get it.
Well, we actually, David Weinberger and I together published one. That's just a website. It's a short, not that short, but it's a page called New Clues. And it's at cluetrain.com/new clues, or new clues / newclues.cluetrain.com. I think both of those will work. That went out in 2015, and basically has to do with how we understand the internet. That the internet is not, in fact, when people say the internet wants me to do this or to do that, that's like saying gravity wants me to do this or that, or food or the air wants me to do this or to do that. The internet is not Facebook and Google and Apple and Twitter. The internet is the gravity that holds all those things together. It's the rising tide that floats all boats. And so that's kind of what we were saying there. We also said, and this is a supposition on our part, which is that the internet is ours. The internet is not Google's or Facebook's. The internet belongs to us. And it's kind of like we invented it. I mean, nature or God invented gravity and the planet, but we invented the damned internet, and it's ours, and it's a human invention, and it is also a genie that's not going back in the bottle. TCP/IP as a protocol is too good at what it does, even though there are some that find fault with it. The profound insight that we should have a protocol, which is nothing more than manners among computers, that says these packets will find the best path to the other end, and any drop packets can be resent. And with complete agnosticism to who's in the middle, and especially toward billing. If the phone companies and the cable companies, which would love to take credit for it, had built the internet in the first place, we wouldn't have it. We'd have a billing system. I worked for BT in the UK for a number of years, and as a consultant, as an outside guy. But J.P. Rangaswamy, who's been a great partner in a great many things, he's almost like a fifth Beatle for the Cluetrain 4. He was one of the first people that came to us and said, love what you're doing. JP was the chief scientist at BT and hired me on. And he said about BT, we are not a communications company. We are a billing company. Our core competency is billing, not communications. Not that they're incompetent at communications, but billing is what they're built for. And, and the governments, same thing. If it had been up to the ITU, which is very much about the telcos and the governments, there would have been tariffs at the borders, like we had in Europe especially, and outside the U.S. as well. We didn't feel it as much with cellular telephony. We don't have it anymore because it turned out to be ludicrously inconvenient. But, if you were in Europe, and I had friends that had this problem, you're in Strasbourg or wherever, and you're in France, but you're on a German cell, all of a sudden you're getting a gigantic bill for data usage, right? This is like ridiculous. Data, that's another problem with data as a fungible commodity. It's not. The internet's a copy machine. It's not, and thank you, Kevin Kelly, for that metaphor. It's a copy machine. You send me a file, you've got a copy of it. You and I are both recording this right now, right? We have copies. We're making copies as we speak.
We're out of time, but if our listener wants to learn more, read the Cluetrain Manifesto, learn more from you, what would be the best place for them to go to?
The easy thing is just look me up, and look up Cluetrain. I mean, the weird thing about Cluetrain is the same website has been there since '99, and we've updated it with a few things. And look at New Clues, even though it's now 6 years old, more than 6 years old. But it's important stuff, I think. And, pick up a copy of The Intention Economy as well. I think that an interesting thing, I wrote that in 2011, came out in 2012. All the companies I mentioned in it, for the most part, are dead, but the points are the same. If I were to rewrite it now, it would be I'd say the same thing with new companies mentioned. So,
yeah.
Take a look at Project VRM and join that list.
Awesome. All right. So doc.searls.com and cluetrain.com are two great sources. We'll include those links and other resources that we talked about in this episode's show notes on marketingspeak.com. Thank you, Doc. This was great. And
thank you, Stefan. Really appreciate it.
Okay.